It's day 4 of the ANC's national conference here at Newzroom in Soweto, a day that started on a high note with the announcement of the top 7 results. President Cyril Ramaphosa being re-elected as president of the African National Congress. We're getting a reaction from you live from Newzroom. Mamoloko Kubayi is the ANC's head of economic transformation, someone who was also running to be the deputy president of the ANC. Let me first get your initial reaction when they announced Cyril Ramaphosa as the president of the ANC for another 5 years. How did you feel? Was it relief?
Excited.
Was it excitement?
Excited. Excited, relieved. In conference, I mean, anything can happen. So you might be confident about your candidate until it's announced. That's when you are. I've been open about my support for the president to be retained second term. I'm happy it has happened.
How do you feel about women that are included in the top 3? You are one of the ANC leaders that has been pushing for even the constitutional amendments to ensure that there's a 50% gender parity in the now top 7. Are you satisfied? I mean, Treasurer General, we've never had a female occupy this all-important position. Do you think this is a good start?
It is a good start, and we appreciate that delegates listened in terms of having even had her, Comrade Gwen, being nominated from the floor and making it. So it shows that our message has gotten to delegates. They understood what we are raising about a gender-to-generational mission. And this is what we are seeing. It's not only about women only, but we have Marupin, who's a younger woman. You've got Mbalula there. You've got Osgwen, 3 women who well seasoned within the organization, children of the ANC themselves, and who have the stride that it's just not only women. It's women and the caliber of women that we have. And that's why we're looking forward to this. I am happy about the outcomes.
Do you think the ANC will be run better administratively, seeing, the people that are occupying these positions? And I'm not saying this because I think women are mere administrators. But do you think, given the caliber of their characters, their leadership, we are likely to have an ANC that is run much better? You know about the challenges even around paying staff members. What hopes do you have they will be able to get it right?
Look, they will not do it alone. Obviously, they will need the support of the entire leadership of the ANC and members of the ANC. I'm looking forward, for example, Mbalula will bring so much energy into that office. With who he is, the vibrancy that he does. And I do believe in terms of many people being able to resonate with the ANC, because he's not very conservative, like a typical ANC.
Far from conservative.
Yeah, he's very far from being conservative. So he resonates with society. He's there on social media, quite hyped. I feel for the spokesperson, whoever is going to be the spokesperson, because he's got a secretary general who's quite out there. But it will help because we'll get feedback easily. With the issues around running, and as well, Mbalula has been running the organizing, quite hands-on, a person who's an organizer by nature. So being the first Deputy Secretary General as well, I do believe that she's going to do well. Marupin Ramokhupa has been the coordinator of the Women's League. But, one of the things that Marupin is one of the few young women ANC deployed as mayors. Early, if you look at her biography, you'll notice that I think she was in her 20s, early 20s, when ANC made her mayor in Northern Cape. She's been an ambassador in India, by the way, Consul General in India, representing South Africa in a global space, an advisor to the president in international relations. So it's a person as well. It's not only just women, not only administrators, but they're versatile. They bring various things that will help. Having been in administration as well themselves, whether in government, in private sector, and where they've been, they bring that experience and work in the organization. But more importantly, I'm expecting to see a better run organization and well-oiled machinery.
I want to ask you about 2 things that Fikile Mbalula mentioned to me when I interviewed him on Newzroom Afrika about him running for Secretary General. He mentioned that there are 2 things that some delegates who approached him to run for this position were not necessarily unhappy, but they were uncomfortable about. One, they said he shoots from the hip. So he only considers what he said after saying it, but two, they said they're a little worried about him just going to the clubs almost every weekend. And he spoke openly about it, that these are some of the things that may have to change. What advice would you have for him as the next Secretary General, so that...
No, he is already the Secretary General.
Yes, as the Secretary General, because as you're saying, he's very relatable, but he himself admits that I do have a few weaknesses that I need to work on.
Yeah, look, he's going to have to know that it's no longer about Mbalula. He's the face and he's the engine of the organization now. So I do believe he will have less time to have. Even if he wanted, he won't have that time. But I think more importantly for me about Mbalula, and which I would give him as an advice, he listens. And I want him to continue to listen to advice. When you approach him and say, Mbax, this is not right. I'm one of those that regularly do. Sometimes he throws tantrums at me, but I will see by action that he has listened. And that's what I appreciate, and I want him to keep that. Because that's what is going to make him succeed. Listening to feedback and taking constructive criticism. He's going to have to know that now, as you say, he is also responsible for carrying the brand ANC. So what he does and what he says can either uplift the brand or destroy the brand. So he's got to be cautious about that. We are not saying he must not be himself, because I think it will be unfair. We must allow him to be Mbalula, because if he then becomes a shadow of himself, he'll live a miserable life and regret being the Secretary General. We must allow him to be himself, but he must be measured.
What do you think this new leadership of the ANC means for South Africa? For people who are watching us and they're not necessarily card-carrying members of the ANC or supporters, and they're asking themselves, how am I going to be affected by this new leadership of the ANC? The ANC is the governing party. There are chances that you may, in fact, do well in the elections in 2024. We don't know what's going to happen. But what does this mean for South Africans?
Look, the re-election of the president, I do believe that it means stability in government. We don't have to panic now, worry whether there will be a recall of a president or a reshuffle. There will be a reshuffle, obviously, because Mbalula has to go. So you have to fill the vacancy there. But it's an issue that, for example, with the stability of government, continuity of the programs that have been there, especially for me around the issues of economy, there's predictability that will continue the reforms that we have started, the work that has started. Secondly, the work that the president has started in the fight against corruption is sustained, will be able to continue, because I don't see any of those top officials blocking that or wanting it to not to happen. The emphasis of conference and having to force that we can't change the issues around step aside. The people who are inducted that can't contest elections. It says we have a new leadership, but we are, as an organization, turning the tide. And as I said earlier on, Clement, it might be slow steps, but if you look at what they mean, there are huge implications. Somebody might think you should have done this long time ago. But for an organization like the ANC, which is a broad church, that has so many members, it's not easy to take such, and especially with our history, to take certain steps. And those steps, when we take them, they actually mean a lot. And that's why we are excited about this leadership, because it says the renewal agenda has not been disrupted.
Are you being cautious in your celebration of this victory of President Cyril Ramaphosa, because the Palapala scandal is not completely out? There's still an investigation by the Public Protector, the Hawks, the Reserve Bank. Yes, he's gone to court to challenge the independent panel's report, but we don't know what the other investigations are going to say. So chances are they may come and say there's a case to answer here, you could have done this, and he may have to take the decision that he had taken 3 weeks ago to resign. So
look, for me, what it comforts me, because and I think I did interview and I said what worried me at that time, it was that this matter was being dealt with in a contaminated environment. So either way, people were feeling that this other way is pushing or protecting. What it gives us an opportunity, and for all those who are responsible for the investigations, it gives them room to do their investigation without being pressurized by a conference. And I do believe that it does, because when I was doing an interview, I said, if the Palapala report came 2 years ago, not 2 weeks before conference, I can tell you, with closing my eyes, that it would have been dealt with differently. So the hype we saw, the agitation and all those things, for me, I believed it was because we were on the doorstep of conference. And even, I don't blame the other opponents of him. I would do the same if I was an opponent, because it was an opportunity to say, can I leverage on this to win? You know, you are competing for a position. Now, with him coming into office, what it does is that it removes this political playing, and then it allows the law enforcement agencies and everybody else to do their work in a very constructive environment, but without being pressurized or being cautious to say, they will say we're supporting this one or we're doing this. And I do believe that whatever it does, as he said previously, by the way, President, one thing I appreciate about him, and maybe that's why I've been so vocal about supporting him, he's been saying, I am accountable. I will account. The same way, when Zondo Commission called him, he didn't run away. They didn't say, I'm the head of state, I don't want to appear. He went. He said, if I have to go there, I will be the first one to appear, and he did that. And I do believe that as he has committed with this one, he will do the same.
Yeah, well, in Parliament, he at some point was refusing to answer questions, which was really lack of accountability there.
No, I don't think so. You remember the rules of Parliament give a context to say, I can say if I'm facing an investigation, until that investigation, because I can implicate myself, like what happened with Bosasa. If we remember how he handled Bosasa, he took criticism from everybody else to say, why did you answer without getting facts? Why did you answer before even getting legal counsel? So those things need to come in. He said, I remember very well, he said, I'm not refusing to answer. Allow me to get counsel. Allow me to get the facts. Let me deal with the law enforcement agencies. At the right time, I'll come back.
I do think that Parliament is a separate institution, Minister, that must be able to do its work, whether the Hawks are investigating or not. Parliament can't stop its responsibility because the Public Protector is investigating, because they have a constitutional obligation to hold the executive accountable, the same way that the Public Protector has an obligation as well. So I do feel that even though the President was making the excuse that, well, there are other law enforcement agencies that are investigating, he had an opportunity to come in, within reason, of course, respond to any question coming out of Parliament, because he's accountable to that institution. I want to ask you lastly...
No, but Clement, let me just come in. The rules of Parliament does make provision. So he didn't violate the rules. The rule says if I have a matter that is sub judice, Parliament doesn't. That's why even on the issue of Palapala before Parliament, it had to get a legal opinion to say, is this sub judice or not? Now, and then it was allowed to say, okay, let's proceed. It doesn't impact. So the rules of Parliament take cognizance of the right of individuals and also the constitutional obligation. That's why a rule would say, when a matter is sub judice, you don't deal with it. For example, somebody can't stand in Parliament and make allegations about me just out of willy-nilly. They say you must bring a substantive motion. So they protect the integrity of individuals and members who are holding office. And that is provided for.
We're out of time, but I have to ask you, you said obviously a reshuffle is going to happen. As a general principle, do you think it's going to make sense that NDZ and Linwe Cecilia are going to be part of the new cabinet?
No, they will have to answer for themselves where they stand. I think they've been doing interviews. I wouldn't want to. The appointment of cabinet is the prerogative of the president. I made that in the context of Comrade Mbalula. There's a vacancy, obvious, because he has to be full-time in the office. Whether that leads to what, but he has to be replaced in government, and he holds a very critical position. And I'm making reference to it because it's in the economic cluster. So for me, in my capacity in cabinet and economic cluster, knowing that transport is one of the critical areas, network industries for us to turn the economy around, we don't want president to delay in filling that vacancy.
All right. Mamoloko Kubayi, I appreciate your time on Newzroom Afrika this afternoon.